So too, we can look at Gaius Suetonius Tranquillas, or Suetonius for short. Suetonius wrote all of these different biographies of the Roman emperors. And in this particular biography, he writes about Emperor Claudius. Now, Suetonius lived under the reign of the Roman Emperor Hadrian, and he was a friend of Pliny the Younger. So he was really well connected, and he writes this about Christianity. Quote, "Because the Jews at Rome caused continuous disturbances, what is happening in Rome in AD 54, and why is the Jewish population having such disturbances in Rome to the point where a Roman historian is mentioning this?" Well, Suetonius says this was at the instigation of Chrestus. The Jewish population in Rome was arguing in the mid-50s about Chrestus. Well, as a result, Emperor Claudius, who reigned from AD 41 to 54, expelled them from the city. So Claudius kicked out all of these Jews from Rome as a result of these instigations and the disturbances. In other words, this was so bad for the public good that Claudius said, I don't know this Chrestus guy, I don't know why the Jews are arguing about this, but we're just going to kick every Jewish person out of Rome. Well, that must have been quite a stir for this to warrant an imperial edict to kick out the entire Jewish population. Is this Christus, or is this Chrestus? See, some people would say, well, that says Chrestus. That's not the name of Christ. The Latin rendering of Christ is Christus, not Chrestus. However, according to most historians, they believe that this is a misspelling of Christ. And I don't mean simply Christian historians. I mean, Bart Ehrman, for example. He's a critic of the New Testament. He says, surely this is a reference to Christ. Moreover, in Latin, this is the Latin rendering of Christ. In Latin, Christus and Chrestus sound the same. So it's very easy that Suetonius could have made a mistake here. Furthermore, when we look in the Roman catacombs, we don't see any Jewish names, which is the context, Jews in Rome arguing over Chrestus. We don't see any Jewish names with the name Chrestus. So, the name sounded like Christus, it's one letter away, and why would there be a Jewish name by the name of Chrestus when there are no recorded Jewish names in the Roman catacombs? This fits what we see in the book of Acts. When we read in Acts chapter 18, verse 2, Paul became acquainted with a Jew named Aquila. He had recently arrived from Italy with his wife Priscilla. So why did Aquila and Priscilla leave Italy? Well, they left Italy when Claudius Caesar deported all the Jews from Rome. This section in Acts chapter 18 is in the 50s AD, and Claudius deported all of these Jews in AD 49. I'm sorry, I messed that up. Earlier I said it was 54, I believe. He ends his reign in 54. Claudius deports all of these Jews in AD 49. That's when he deported them. So we have Aquila and Priscilla who show up in Corinth, Greece by the early 50s AD. And what's interesting about this is that after the death of Claudius in AD 54, Emperor Nero rescinded this edict, and the Jewish people flooded back into the city of Rome. At the end of the letter to the Romans in chapter 16, written in the winter of AD 56 and 57, who is back in Rome? Aquila and Priscilla. So they were kicked out of their homes in AD 49. Then we see that the edict was rescinded in AD 54, just in time for Paul to write Romans in AD 56, 57, where Aquila and Priscilla are back in their hometown. Well, if this is an interpolation or a forgery, that would mean that this wouldn't add to our case for Christ, but is it? No, this goes back to Suetonius. Robert von Vorst says, quote, "The text of these two letters is well attested and stable, and their authenticity is not seriously disputed. The overwhelming majority of modern scholarship holds this sentence to be genuine." Why? Because a Christian interpolator or forger, somebody who was messing with the text, wouldn't be so negative to Christianity. In his biography about the life of Nero, Suetonius refers to Christianity as a sect professing a new and mischievous religious belief. So a Christian interpolator wouldn't write it that way. That's not good PR for Christianity. Moreover, a Christian interpolator wouldn't be likely to misspell Jesus' name. That seems like something that you would tend to get right if you were a Christian interpolator.